Hey guys, Ben here and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Smallville. We got an article to break down. Also, we've got some other DCU topics that we need to cover in the video. So let's go ahead and get into this. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos later this year. So we're going to try and upload more frequently, as I've been saying in recent uploads, but quite frankly there hasn't been too much DC news to cover. So if you guys want any other TV shows or films covered, let me know down in the comments below. What would you like to see? I really do appreciate you guys who comment every video. Like, I still read all the comments and everything, and I know the channel is obviously going through kind of this weird phase where we don't have the Arrowverse, but we're still making content to do with a lot of other things. So if you want stuff that's not DC, let me know down in the comments below. I would just like to see what you guys would want to see on the channel. So let's go ahead and get into today's main topic. This is to do with this Screen Rant article by Kevin Erdman, and he's talking about Smallville and how he thinks Superman, the movie that's coming out later this year, is basically Smallville season 11. So I just thought, this is an interesting article when it popped up. Let's break this down, let's talk about it, and then we got a couple of other DCU related articles to break down towards the end of this video. So Kevin says this: I'm realizing that James Gunn's Superman has a pretty good chance of being the closest thing we might ever get to Smallville season 11 in live action. The first live action movie in the new DC universe, 2025 Superman, promises to be an inspiring new era for the Man of Steel. However, I do think there's going to be some shared DNA with the classic Smallville series that aired on the CW and its intended future. So let's break this down, let's talk about what he had to say, because I do think he makes some valid points throughout this article. So, as we all know, Smallville ran for 10 seasons, and it detailed Clark's high school years and young adult life as he developed his powers and formed key relationships and gradually shaped the kind of hero he wanted to be when he was finally ready to don the cape and become Superman. An iconic show that would later help kick off the CW's entire DC Arrowverse of shows, and the future of Smallville's universe was detailed in the season 11 comics, and there have been proposals to even develop an animated revival series, which we've talked about a lot on this channel. However, I do believe that James Gunn's Superman will essentially fill the season 11 void on the big screen, obviously with different actors. That is a big caveat here, but I think Kevin makes some good points, so let's continue with this. So, as seen in the trailers and as confirmed by James Gunn himself, Superman will not be a typical superhero origin story. Instead, David Corenswet's Clark Kent / Kal-El will be the Man of Steel for some time already, though still early on in his career as Superman in the DCU. So this is not unlike Matt Reeves' The Batman, which saw Robert Pattinson's Bruce Wayne in the second year as the Dark Knight. It's kind of like a Superman year 2, because he's already Superman, but he is still forming what it truly means to be Superman, and also he's still forming those relationships surrounding him, because I'm pretty sure in this film he is fairly new to actually going out with Lois, so that's a big factor here. So what this means is that Superman will already be an established public figure in the DCU when the new movie begins, and Clark Kent will already be working at the Daily Planet in Metropolis, so we're not going to see how he became Superman for the first time and how he joined the Daily Planet. It's already happened. So it's also been confirmed that Superman will have already started a relationship with Lois Lane, and it's in its early stages, as I mentioned. So that said, it has been confirmed that Superman will still be trying to reconcile his alien heritage as a Kryptonian with his human upbringing in Kansas. So it's essentially Superman year 2. You're going to see him already established, and as you know, it already has a few things in common with what would have happened in Smallville season 11 if it ever were to happen in live action. Obviously, you have the comic books. We're not necessarily comparing it exactly to the comic books, but we're kind of comparing it to what would happen if there was that revival and we continue from where season 10 left off in live action. So Kevin goes on to say, keeping all of that in mind, it's easy to draw a comparison to the ending of Smallville and the subsequent season 11 comic series of Smallville. After all, the CW show ended with Tom Welling's Clark Kent suiting up and ready to officially save the day as Superman for the first time, and Smallville season 11 also details Superman in the early days of his career in the comics, as his typical status quo from the original comics finally starts solidifying. So James Gunn's Superman looks to be sharing a similar setting, with Corin Sweat's Man of Steel being an already established hero but is still finalizing certain parts of his own status quo in the DCU. This includes Superman's rivalry with Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, and based on the trailers, it does look like Luthor has been harboring a grudge against Superman for quite some time, and it's also worth mentioning that his company in the DCU is called Luthor Corp rather than LexCorp in the comics, just like in Smallville before Rosenbaum's Luthor had the name changed by the series end. So perhaps the DCU's Lex will do the same. So essentially Kevin's main comparison here is between how, like, this is early days Superman, but you've already kind of had a little bit of Superman, and that's kind of where season 11 would pick off in live action, really, when you think logically. Even if you just like ignore what happens in the season 11 comics, there's like characters that show up like Batman and everything. You don't need to do that. You can do something completely different if they were to do some sort of Smallville revival, but obviously the main factor going against that is the age of all the actors, because they're definitely too old to be playing just a continuation of the Smallville series. So let's talk about the next subheading in this article. It's recently been reported that the Smallville actors Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum have pitched an animated sequel to Smallville to DC Studios. However, they're yet to hear back in terms of any kind of green light. An animated series does sound fascinating and very entertaining, and the DCU does have confirmed room for Elseworld stories beyond their main continuity, as we know there is like a bunch of new animated shows that are in Elseworlds. Also, I think there's going to be some films that are going to be set in DC Elseworlds as well. So I do think it's likely that DC is currently holding off due to the simple fact that Gunn's Superman will end up being too similar to the proposed Smallville series, especially considering the setting. And if that animated show does pick up right after, it's going to be similar. It will be kind of that year 2 Superman or that year 1 Superman. It's not necessarily an origin story, it's kind of like a continuation. And I think Kevin makes a very good point that I think they would be way too similar in terms of like where Superman is at. They would literally be at a very similar stage. So given the pressure to make sure that Superman is a success, to kick off an entire brand new connected universe of films, shows and more, it does make sense that DC Studios wouldn't necessarily want to compete with itself, which could happen. Obviously Superman's a film, and obviously a Smallville revival would be a TV show, so you're not really directly competing, but I get the idea. And perhaps a Smallville reality series will become a reality one day, but I really don't see it happening anytime soon, not at least in the next couple of years, which I completely agree with. And I echo everything that Kevin has said in this article, because I think he brings up some very good points, as I've said, and I just don't think this is going to happen for a while. But that's not to say that Smallville isn't going to be continuing in the future. I think it will at some point. It's just going to be a waiting game for now. So let's move on to the next article. We need to break this down because I think it's very, very interesting, and this is to do with the Superman movie and the lawsuit that it's been dealing with. So apparently, according to Andy, my good friend, who wrote this article for Screen Rant, the DCU film is going to be getting out of a major lawsuit that has been dealing with. Now, some of you guys might have heard of this, and there was this ongoing lawsuit that James Gunn's Superman film has actually had to deal with, and this is to do with the Superman estate. It's to do with people that run Joe Shuster, the original Superman co-creator in the comics, his estate, because they basically tried to sue to try and get them not to release it in certain key territories, because they claimed that the studio, Warner Brothers, didn't have the rights to release the DCU installment in several territories, which they were claiming, you know, this is why we're doing the lawsuit. So according to Bloomberg, the judge on this ruled that Superman's movie lawsuit from the estate cited a lack of jurisdiction over the case, and at the time of publication, Warner Brothers and DC have yet to comment on this, but this is definitely a huge step, And I don't think it means necessarily too much for the DCU or for Superman, but I think this was more like a money thing, and this happens behind the scenes a lot, but this was just more public. So this has just had a few people worried, like, is Superman not what they expected? Like, why are they trying to do this? Are they trying to block the film? It's a bit strange because it's coming from the estate of Joe Shuster, and I don't know what they gain from it apart from some money maybe, but as the movie lawsuit was putting the film's release date at risk in the UK, Australia, Ireland and Canada, this would have been a huge problem for DCU's films' box office results, as they are very key territories, as we all know. And so even in other international markets, it could have proved very, very troublesome just in case anything actually was blocked and it couldn't release in certain countries and certain cities around the world. So yeah, the big news, that lawsuit is gone, it's been dismissed. I don't think anything much more of this is going to be happening because I don't believe the case actually went to trial. I think it was dismissed before, and this is really an issue of money, I feel like. So let me know down in the comments below, what do you think about all of this? Do you think this is going to affect the DCU? Do you think it's going to affect Superman? Let me know. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate everyone that has stuck around. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and a comment, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. And for now, you can click on the top right corner of the screen to watch my latest video, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.